Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday to everyone. Welcome to the Knowing Me, Knowing You webinar. My name is Alexandra Feehan, the editor of Power Retail, and I will be your moderator for today's session. It's a pleasure having everybody here today for what will be an informative and valuable webinar. So today we will be underpinning some of the core principles of creating deep and meaningful relationships with your customer. But before I introduce you to our stellar lineup of panelists today, let me take a few seconds to run through some housekeeping. Today's webinar will cover a wide range of topics, so if you have any questions for our illustrious speakers today, be sure to pop them into the questions tab on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will do our best to answer them when we can, either at the end of the webinar or afterwards. So today we are joined by Reese Thomas, the Senior Commercial Manager at Klarna. We are also joined by Kyle Rifkin, the Director of Partnerships APAC at BigCommerce, and Michaela Michaud, the Head of Acquisition and Retention at Adore Beauty. Thank you everybody for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Australians are shopping online more than ever before, and in this rapidly evolving landscape, it's important to understand exactly what consumers want and, importantly, what they need to create a long, lasting and loyal relationship with retailers. The grocery list of tools available to retailers to help them stay relevant and stay connected to customers is ever-changing and evolving. As an example, the increased demand for retailers to offer different payment options is on the rise. So options like buy now, pay later are no longer a nice to have, but a value add, as well as a marketing tool for retailers. So let's jump right in, shall we? I'm going to open it up to Michaela, the Head of Acquisition and Retention at Adore Beauty. What has been the biggest challenge for retailers in the past year when it comes to maintaining relationships with customers?
I think the challenge wasn't a new one. It's really was about maintaining, I think, authenticity with our customers and then relevancy to them. I think the intensity of that, though, changed over the last 12 months. The need to connect, I think, on an even more real level and to kind of show that more human side of the brand was even more important. And then the relevancy piece, people's needs shifted so much in terms of all of a sudden what mattered even more to them. And then delivering on that, I think, was the other really key component that we took really seriously internally. And I think the retailers that did really well in terms of servicing the customer needs were the ones that took that seriously as well. In particular, if we think of that last mile element, knowing that people couldn't get out to the shops and just how important those components ended up becoming in the journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that last mile comment is definitely telling, at least from what we see, Michaela, as well. So we ran a study recently across Australia and New Zealand with over 3,500 shoppers with our good friends over at Power Retail. And some of the insights that we got from it is there's a particularly interesting challenge that retailers are facing right now in terms of balancing the need for fast delivery on top of the need to maintain your P&L line with something like that. So specifically, we found that 71% of consumers actually want free delivery, while only 19% want it fast. And then simultaneously, we've actually seen that the average delivery price has risen over the last year. So from 2020, it was the average price was around $3.24, and then actually bumped up to $3.94 in our most recent study that we ran. And often what we're finding is that a lot less retailers are offering free delivery. So there seems to be this unique challenge where cost is more important than speed, but you need to balance that with your P&L line overall. And obviously the challenges that COVID continues to present to your business makes this a very interesting tightrope to walk.
Definitely. And we
Reese,
certainly,
yeah. Sorry, please keep going. Reese, as the Senior Commercial Manager at Klarna, you'd have first-hand experience at seeing how Australians are adapting to online retail and what it means for brands. And people are becoming increasingly drawn to convenience and flexibility. Are these aspects driving more loyalty and repeat purchases behaviour rather than the brand itself?
So I think it's important to distinguish between brand loyalty and repeat purchase behaviour, as while both are closely related, the functions that actually drive the two are very different. So Not to sound like a school teacher, I guess, but a repeat purchase would be, I think we all know, is the act of repurchasing the same item, you know, or the same product or brand over and over again based on routine or habitual buying decisions, and where the search for information around those purchases decreases or becomes more limited over time. On the other hand, brand loyalty is associated with a consistent preference and or purchase of one brand in a specific product or category. So when you as a brand delight a consumer with your product, they'll consciously choose to make repeat purchases over time, become loyal to that particular brand regardless of price, convenience, or any other competitor marketing tactics. So I'll give you an example. Toothpaste is something that we all, I hope, purchase frequently without paying too much attention to. We don't, often look further than the packaging or pricing, and we'll tend to stick with that one brand unless we're motivated by a particular promotion, or point of purchase displays, etc. Some consumers might even seek bargains, even if the quality is not, satisfactory for them. So Apple, on the other hand, have not only established repeat purchase behavior, but they've also created an incredibly loyal customer base. So loyal that they're willing to actually sleep out the front of a store following the launch of a new product. So what they've done is they've attached a psychological and emotional value to their products that almost forces consumers to see Apple as an extension of themselves, whereas no toothpaste brand on the planet does that. So I guess to answer your question, what's the so what? What's the point of establishing a loyalty program and by extension, loyal customers? What we've actually seen with the merchants that we partner with is that those who have established a loyalty program, establish a loyal customer base, and they enjoy three things. They have a reduced marketing and transaction costs. They would also have reduced customer turnover expenses, and then obviously increased positive word of mouth. So I guess brand loyal customers are the foundation and for a stable and increasing market share. But the problem is there's no short-term fix for establishing brand loyalty, and I don't know if it has anything to do with convenience and flexibility. And what we've seen here is actually more to do with value. So creating loyalty does take time and consistency, as well as understanding your customers' needs and desires. But what I would say is I'd encourage people on the call to think about three key things in this sort of area. The first is to make sure that your consumer value proposition strictly reinforces your objectives. So, don't put any additional value in that you don't need to drive the specific objective that you want from your loyalty program. Secondly, you really want to identify the features and benefits that consumers value. So particularly for your brand or for your category, but that cost you very little. And the last piece would be have a good internal understanding of what the value is that you're willing to give away and to whom. So that requires a really deep understanding of your data. We tend to speak broadly about loyalty programs and value propositions, but you also need to think internally about that value proposition. So and how it differs for each type of your consumer. So you can do this explicitly by designing tiers in your program, like what our good friends over at Adore Beauty have done. Or you can do it implicitly by how you design the broader program and how you think about what to offer each of those consumers. So is it flexibility, is it convenience, or is it value? I think you'll only really know that once you start digging, I guess, deeper into your data.
Absolutely. And so, Kyle, just wanted to bounce off that. What do you think is the most important thing for retailers to create a customer stickiness and long-lasting relationships with their customers?
Well, relating it back to the world of software, basically in subscription software, there's this acronym. Those of you that have been around the block have probably heard of this, but it's something called lifetime value to cost of customer acquisition, or LTV to CAC. So this was something that was put out by one of the PE firms years and years ago. It's a lifeblood metric that people look at with respect to evaluating a business and whether or not they want to make that acquisition, bring it into the fold, or whatever it might be when they're actually going out to public markets. And so where I'm going with that is, without customer stickiness, what's the point of what we're doing? Ultimately, if you're taking the time out of your schedule today to take something like this in, chances are you're a business that's not just trying to be a lifestyle business. You're trying to hit the gas pedal, and you have some really strong ambition. Whether that's becoming, the next Adore Beauty that's listed on the ASX, or even just a strong player on the national front across Australia. And so, if you're trying to make your business profitable and grow, there's extreme difficulty if you're not putting in place the efforts to create the relationship with your customer. Like I was saying before, whether you're public like Adore Beauty is, or if you're or like ourselves, or like Klarna, or if you're backed by private equity or a venture capital firm, or if you even have aspirations for that and you have private investors, they're going to relentlessly hound you on your ability to retain your customer. By now, all of us would have heard about the old adage that it's a lot cheaper to keep the customers that you already have in your database versus going out and acquiring the new ones. Now, of course, you need to always have that strategy with respect to SEO and PPC to drive eyeballs at the top of your funnel. But the real good businesses, the businesses like Adore Beauty that grow from a team of one to a team of many that they are now, really recognize the importance of putting quite a bit of investment, both in terms of people, in terms of education internally, in terms of programs that they put together, or most recently, obviously, with the loyalty program that they've rolled out. There's a clear emphasis on that. How do we create this great relationship between our existing customers and make sure that they're having the best experience that they possibly can, right? And so, why is this important? Well, if you're serious about growth for your business, you really have no choice. And so the question then becomes, well, how do I do that? And there's some other questions that we'll get into today, I'm sure, that will give you some nuggets to take away to apply to your business. But in one particular aspect to kind of keep in mind that, again, we noticed through this research report that we ran in conjunction with Power Retail, was specifically focusing on reviews. And so what we're finding is that your customers are actually getting a lot smarter with respect to the amount of reviews that they take in on a product level, as well as on a brand level. And so specifically, we've found that the number of reviews taken in by customers specific to brands is increasing dramatically. So let's say that a customer is looking you up on Google or whatever search engine they're using, and they're finding reviews about you. There's actually been a 58% increase in customers that will take in 3 to 5 reviews on your specific your brand. And that number has actually doubled in terms of the amount of customers that are taking in 5 or more reviews. So it used to be the reviews game was a very commodity driven thing. You needed to have 1 or 2 reviews and off you could go, no problems. And by and large, that's what we found when we ran this report over a year ago initially, but that's actually ratcheted up that much more over the last 12 months with COVID and the rest of it, where it's no longer just getting a couple of reviews on there. You actually need to be quite proactive with something like that, which again, that's what feeds the funnel in terms of getting customers back. And then it also has the benefit of being used as that top of the funnel engine to get more eyeballs and customers into your net.
Absolutely. So just touching on loyalty as well, there are myriad drivers of loyalty, from payment options to delivery services, reward programs, customer experience, tiers. I could go on. But Michaela, how have these elements evolved over the past year, and what do you think they will look like in the future?
I think over the past year, and this was pre us launching our loyalty program, the key drivers were really all about the convenience drivers and the value drivers. So if we think about the way that we were removing friction from checkout with things like great UX on the site, if it was about that last mile piece, so the free shipping piece, but then also a myriad of excellent value-based offers, which the customer was definitely looking for. I think they're some of the foundational drivers of loyalty, because that's what I think brings the customer in and just establishes that sort of base level of trust with said that we can offer you this, and now we can deliver this for you. And then I guess that's the real acquisition piece of the loyalty or the LTV and CAC equation. But then really in terms of building that longer term loyalty, you need to start to shift into, I think, more greater value-based drivers of loyalty. So that's where a loyalty program, I think, comes in perfectly, because the customer is more entrenched in your brand. They want to identify and I think engage with your brand more. So developing that kind of adds another layer on top. And then I think there's just also ongoing connection, whether it be delivering the kind of content that your customers want so that you become that go-to, almost establishing what I would call a friendship with the customer. If you think of us, and this is something that Adore Beauty think about all the time, how can we almost be that go-to best friend that's providing that either that sense check or information about what the customer wants to support them in their decisions. I think thinking about a customer relationship in those terms, so starting with the functional at first, but then getting deeper and deeper, and what happens when you develop a deeper friendship, you're sharing more, you want to be more involved in each other's lives. I think that's a really great way of thinking about loyalty drivers from a longer term. So start with the convenience and functional based factors, move in more to the value based and I think emotional factors as you get deeper and deeper into that relationship. And then from a data perspective, I think again, it's just understanding what is then going to be relevant to share with them as part of that relationship. I don't think relevancy ever stops being a really key factor in terms of that loyalty equation and building that relationship with a customer.
Tell you what, there's no better way to get a good friendship going with your customer than putting in a little Tim Tam in your package. As as quirky as that is, I think that's a absolutely genius move that that your brand has done and continues to do to this day. You know, it's just that nice little warm and fuzzy experience, right? When you open up the package.
I have to say that when my partner orders from Adore Beauty, I get excited because I know that I get the Tim Tam.
Oh, I hope you've never taken it though without asking, Reese, because trust me, we know if we see that gone, we know it's meant to be in there.
Oh, I love that Tim Tam. It's so great. It's the best. Honestly, sometimes it's the best part of the package because you get a little treat. It's like a little thank you. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
So as mentioned earlier by Michaela, each of these technologies play an integral role in the customer awareness and brand loyalty. So let's dig a little bit deeper. So Reese and Kyle, what roles does technology play here, and how can retailers leverage new solutions and services to drive loyalty?
I'm happy to go if you want, Kyle.
You take it, go for it.
I'll keep it shorter this time than I did last time. I think the two things here would be data and AI. And I know those two things, terms get thrown around quite a lot, but it's really important, I think, to understand your data. I think if you're actually able to harness at least 5% of the data that all of us as businesses, merchants, brands, retailers gather, then you'll have an edge over your competitors. So it's about using that data to make meaningful decisions. So if you could look at that data and see that your high value customers purchase the same amount regardless of, say, discounting, you could then assume that they might be willing to pay more for, say, a paid loyalty program, which we're actually seeing a little bit more in the market now, which I find quite interesting. But it might not make sense, but it actually benefits both the retailer and the consumer. So, if you charge a fee for a loyalty program, the fee is guaranteed to the retailer upfront, which is great. The customer who is paying for that benefit is more likely to shop with that particular retailer or brand, so they can, guarantee a return on their investment. And then lastly, it means that retailers can gain quality data about their customers. So, information and insights that they can be leveraged for more personalized interactions. And I think personalization is another thing which I could talk for a while about, but I think I'll leave out of this one. And as I said, the other piece from a technology perspective is AI. And I think where this is playing a really big part is actually with the customer service side of stuff. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, either Michaela or Kyle, but that one of the stats that I've been reading lately is that it's expected that I think it's almost 85% of customer interactions with all brands will be through AI-powered chatbots. So I guess making sure that you have the right technology in place in this particular area will help drive repeat customer purchases through excellent customer service.
Yeah, the report definitely touches on some aspects with respect to chatbots and having live chat functionality on the site and things like that. look, from my flavor to the answer to this question is that, I mean, it's never been more important for a business of any size, really, just to consider their technology stack that they're plugging into the e-commerce platform that they're using. But, you know, for me, I just like kind of boiling things down to really basic concepts. And if you kind of skim through our report, I think really what you'll find, or at least this is what I took away from it, is that there's sort of 3 key areas that boiled up, and I relate it back to something called a flywheel. And so if any of you are kind of like science nerds, or, you know, have done a little bit of studying in science and chemistry in particular, you can think of this flywheel as something like something known as like an endothermic reaction. So in other words, the reaction itself keeps on running better and better, produces more and more output when you either put a lot of heat in the right area in the reaction, or you cool it off in the right area. And so specifically the 3 areas that I'm talking about with this flywheel are payments, right? And so obviously Reese and the gang are the experts in that area, but you know, there's all kinds of trends that you'll see in that paper with respect to demographics and the amount of methods to provide for payments. But that's obviously a key proposition to kind of beginning that journey. Second area being shipping. I touched on that at the start when I came in off the back of what Michaela was talking about. There's all kinds of interesting trends that are going on there, and obviously that last touch point that you have leading up to that last mile with the consumer is just absolutely critical, and it's only going to continue to charge up that much more. And then finally, I spoke about this at length just a moment ago, but reviews being kind of that third piece to kind of draw you right back to the very start of that flywheel. And so each one of those elements, I would say, are kind of like the key value pieces that sort of popped up with this report, and each one of them are significant contributors. But obviously there's all kinds of other offshoots within this report. Specifically, it talks about things like chatbots, like we were just talking about things like around shopping cart abandonment. And so again, like the technology that you use, no matter if you're a massive business like a Woolworths, or you're a business that just got started yesterday, just determining what's the right business, the right technology for you to use at your stage of growth has never been more important.
Absolutely. So taking away something from today's session is that constantly delivering value is key to driving long-term loyalty. Michaela, what do retailers need to consider to ensure value creation is ongoing and helping them achieve relevance?
I think the really interesting thing here is that the concept of loyalty is always changing, because people and customers are always changing. So I think the closer that you can stay to your customers and what they want, and the deeper you can understand what they want and what is driving them, is really the key to maintaining that long-term relationship. There are so many different ways in which people can do that. There is excellent industry resources such as the BigCommerce State of Ecom report. But then I think more specifically to your own business, it's either investing in some level of research if you've got the budget to do that with external agencies, or even just, you know, simple things such as doing an email survey or a poll on Instagram, whatever it may be. The closer you can get to your customer, the more you can understand what's driving them and what matters to them. I think the better you're going to be able to then service whatever those needs are. I think the other part is involving them in your brand in a way that makes sense for your business as much as possible. So a great example of a furniture business a few years ago that were launching a new color of a particular ottoman, and they put it up on social. What should our next color be? Do you want this color or that color? And then the most important piece is delivering on that. So they backed it up, they brought out the color that got the most votes. So it makes the customer feel a part of the brand. And I think harking back to something that Reese said earlier about that social identity piece and how people relate themselves and who they are to their brands, I think the more you can communicate to a customer, this is what we're about, and you're part of that, that really entrenches, I think, that feeling of emotional connection. And then you use the data that you have about the customer, that you're asking them about, that you're finding from the industry, to then develop the best, I guess, offer for them in the marketplace. And it's really the combination of those two things. And I think whether, you know, I always talk about art versus science. So whether you're a scientist who appreciates art or you're an artist who respects science, it's really when you take those two factors and join them together, that's where the magic happens, because loyalty isn't, it's not always just about having a program with lots of points and you tick a box. Loyalty really is just about relationship building at its most fundamental. So I think that's that can speak to businesses, it can speak to life. So yeah, keep it simple, but then use what you've got at hand.
I love a good art and science metaphor there. So well done. Look, I wanted to add to this as well, just around beyond our report. Australia Post is another obviously trusted brand in the market that continues to just pump out great research and analysis. And most recently, they put out their annual e-commerce report. And the headline is basically that the trends that we're seeing with respect to e-commerce and the growth and the boom that happened as COVID first started is here to stay, right? Mm-hmm. So the challenge has kind of moved from, I feel like, or at least the 2.0 of this equation is, great, you have your online presence. Now it's, how are you going to differentiate it in such a way that your business will grow and stand out from the crowd? And the good news is there's not any one particular pathway to success. It's really kind of a choose your own adventure style. And I'll use an example of 4 Pillars Gin, which is one of our customers that has done some really interesting things with how do they marry up the very experiential style of physical retail that they do with respect to bringing in for tasting, showing you all the great ingredients that they put into it, the story behind the brand. That's obviously a key part of their story. And so, their answer in terms of, how do we create that value in a digital aspect with e-commerce was basically applying a what's known as a headless approach to e-commerce. And so that's something that BigCommerce happens to do quite well. And so for those of you that haven't looked at 4 Pillars Gin's site before, please just go ahead and Google it now. It's just a really great immersive experience from start to finish. And the way that they've set it up with their digital agency that they work with is basically the purchase pathway is not the endpoint. It's always present at all the various stages that you're going through their site, which is really interesting. And so from start to finish, the imagery is there. The content and copy that's on the site itself is beautiful. So it's just kind of weighing up headless as a potential option for your brand. We have seen more and more brands, choosing to go down this particular pathway. It used to be, I would say 12 to 18 months ago, the question was more of, well, why do you want to do headless? Whereas now it's an understood about the why, and brands are becoming smarter about the reasons why they want to achieve it. Now it's just selecting the right tools and technology to make that happen, which is a great pathway to kind of become more relevant and create that value for your consumers.
And Reese, do you have anything to add to that?
Honestly, no. I think I'd just be repeating what Michaela and Kyle have just said. I wouldn't want to take away what they've just conveyed.
Perfect, no worries. Well, I just wanted to offer everyone a huge thank you for being here today. So that was fantastic. And what we're going to do now is ask a few questions that have been sent in by our lovely audience. So we're going to start with Rebecca from the Gilded Pear. Michaela and Kyle, how do you identify your ideal customer segments with a large multi-product e-commerce store?
That's a question.
It is a great question. So I'll kick off, Kyle, and you can jump in.
I'll toss that one over to you. Yeah.
It really comes down to what is ideal. So linking things back to your customer segments, back to sort of broader business goals, I think is really important when answering this one, because for example, you could take that metric of lifetime value and just look at the customer purely from that perspective, break the customers down into groups on particular lifestyle value ranges, but then you might find that the customers that have the highest lifetime value, maybe they're buying a product or buying a range of products that are incredibly low margin. And I think that's where it comes back to sort of what is the business trying to achieve. achieve. So, I mean, there's lots of then great strategies that you can use to sort of shift that, but I think start with what you want to achieve as a business. Having great flexible data, I think, is really important, because then it allows you to interrogate, I guess, your database or the data that you have on your customers from a multitude of dimensions, link that back to what's important to the business. And then I think that's when you'll find your ideal customer segments. It's really all in the definition, and then flexibility of data to be able to cut it in different ways. Then the creativity side is, okay, well, how do we shift this particular behavior? I think for us, lifetime value is incredibly important. So we have a really clear view of that, what that is within the business, and then some really clear strategies to shift that, and then great reporting to then know if we've been able to achieve that. So having a good process around it, I think, is a good foundation.
Yeah, my answer would be a little bit more tactical, I think, in the sense that you know, I think the response here is really, it needs to be tailored to, you know, whoever's asking the question, right? And so if you're even asking the question, let's just assume that you're a retailer with some strong ambitions in terms of taking on the world. And, you know, if you're selling a bunch of different products and you have a large multi-product store, then clearly you're going to have some of those ambitions. And so I think, firstly, like, you either need to be a complete numbers and metrics oriented founder, if you're the founder of this business, or if you're not that person and you're more of the high level strategic thinker, let me set people in a direction and go chase after it, then you've got to you've got to mentor, or you've got to train somebody up to be that person in your business that's just absolutely obsessed with numbers and metrics and you know, the old marketing term, recency, frequency, and monetary value, RFM metrics, those kinds of things. Once you have that, then someone within your business can then own that marketing automation tool or that customer data platform that you have in place, ideally, to analyze some of the stuff in terms of figuring out who that ideal customer segment is, because that person will actually be interested in it. It's part of why they're doing what they're doing, right? It lights up sort of that purpose-driven style of their work. And so, you know, things like this used to be way harder, not all that long ago, really. Used to need a fairly large budget to kind of look at this kind of stuff, whether you were using something like a Responsus or an Adobe campaign to kind of really slice and dice the data to make sense of it all. But now all you really need is a solution like a Klaviyo or a .digital or you know tools like that, which can suit your business needs, because they both have strength in analytics. Like, they've both come so far, and other solutions that I'm not even thinking of right now off the top of my head have come so far with respect to analytics and reporting. So you can kind of take these assumptions that you've created in terms of who your ideal customer are and actually prove them back to data that you're seeing, you know, coming in from your campaigns. And that's where the key is. You know, again, both of these solutions, .digital and Klaviyo and others on the market, are typically quite favorable from an economic standpoint. You know, if you're just a middleweight brand in Australia, you no longer need to pay that six-figure bill to a massive marketing organization in order to get this kind of detailed insight on your business. And that's terrific progress, because that wasn't always the case for us out here in Australia. And so things have changed quite rapidly to enable you to make these kinds of calls and really figure out what the ideal profile is.
Absolutely. The future is now. Love to see it. We also have a question from Patty from Brady for Reese and Michaela. What tactics can B2B e-commerce companies learn from B2C loyalty tactics? Reese, let's start with you.
So I think both B2B and B2C are very different beasts, but they share a lot of similarities. When it comes to B2B marketing, what's important for, I guess, brands to understand is how to speak to the right audience, right? Which is the same when you're talking about B2C. What I would suggest is the ability to build those B2B tactics in a way in which benefits you as a business in the long term, because it's never going to be tactical, right? With B2B, it's always going to be strategic and long term, and understanding what's going to be important to building those relationships over the long term. Now, when it comes to B2C loyalty tactics, those are very much based or built upon tactical promotions or coupons or discounting and things like that. Stuff to get people through the door and buying products, right? B2B loyalty tactics are all about relationship building and long-term relationship building. And so those manifest themselves in going to events like this, for instance. I right now, I would hope I'm creating a very good B2B relationship with Kyle Rifkin, Director of Partnerships at BigCommerce. And I'm hoping that at the end of this event, there'll be a few people who will add me on LinkedIn, and then I can start to talk to them from a B2B perspective and build those relationships there. This is not effective for a B2C loyalty campaign. There's only so many people I can talk to on a webinar, which is why B2C tactics have to be embedded within mass campaigns and making sure that multitudes of people see what particular businesses are driving out there from a messaging perspective, and then that's when the data collection starts. That's when businesses can start to see what resonates, and then we can start to build loyalty programs accordingly. So while there are similarities between the two, B2B and B2C, I think depending on the business in which you're in, you have to really start to spend a bit of money to make a bit of money. So you have to spend the money to start gathering the data to then refine the actual loyalty tactics and programs that you'll start embedding within your brand culture. So yeah, I don't know. I'd hand it back over to you, Kyle or Michaela. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it seems like the components are very similar. So you've definitely got those transactional components of the relationship, and then those more value add components. It's probably the weighting on the two. I think in the B2B environments, the value-based ones, because they are the longer term ones, I think need to be a lot more important, because you're right, the transactional ones are far more momentary. And if you think about any sort of B2B relationship, you've got a contract to sign, you've got financials to work out, but really all of the heavy lifting and investment really needs to be in those value add relationship components. I think it kind of slightly is in a different balance, but still both present in the B2C loyalty space.
I would say that, and maybe I'm off base with this, but every company is a B2B and a B2C company.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to sit or straddle across both areas and make sure that you approach each with different tactics.
Yeah, that would be my only add here, based off what you guys were talking about, is just, there's less delineation, I feel like, or at least practically when you're a business, in terms of this is how I communicate B2B versus this is how I communicate B2C, I would say, in the sense that the overall principles that you're applying are similar, right? Because ultimately, particularly now, there's better and better technology from a B2B aspect to handle those use cases in a more personalized manner, right? Like, yeah, you look at it from an e-commerce platform standpoint, looking at things like price lists and the rest of it, in terms of giving each individual buyer some different little nuanced experience within your site to kind of give their own purchasing journey, their own unique flavor that makes the most sense to them and leads to better conversion for you. Like, that tactic is no different, right, than your B2C style experience, where Michaela is drawing up a great campaign that she's doing from a retention aspect that starts with marketing automation and has display on the site and everything that leads to ultimately driving more revenue. It's different flavors of the same ultimate concept here. And so I think slowly but surely the world of B2B, I think is waking up to, it's not that it's overwhelmingly different, right? Like, it's just a different flavor of the same thing that a lot of these B2C brands and direct-to-consumer brands are doing quite well.
So we have a follow-up question from Cian from Trustpilot, who asks, what is the realest lesson you've learned on this path of continuous discovery? Again, Reese, Michaela, Kyle, over to you. With Michaela.
Oh, the realest lesson. I think it is to be real as a brand. It's something that we take incredibly seriously, but also we kind of take the mickey of ourselves as well, and that's kind of where the authenticity for us comes up. I think you're going to create the best customer relationships if you really know who you are as a brand and what you represent, because then you are going to attract customers who resonate with that, and then you're going to have a really authentic connection. And I think we see that all the time, in particular on our social channels. The connection, the engagement that we have with our customers is yeah, it's really genuine, because we kind of take the mickey out of ourselves, and that's just who we are. But I think that has enabled some excellent customer relationships in all other channels then as well. So it kind of leads through everything. Yeah, so the realest lesson is just to be real, know who you are, and don't be afraid to be it.
I love it.
I'd add to that. I think what we've learned is, I guess the realest lesson that we've learned here at Klarna is to listen. And I think listen to our customers. I think it's easy to have a CS team which responds to customer queries and make sure that everyone is happy and get the response out the door. But actually sitting down and analysing what customers are writing in about, those are the people that have actually taken time out of their day to give you feedback. Like that is invaluable feedback. You don't have to pay a UX researcher to do that. You've got that for free. So I would say the realest lesson that we've learned here at Klarna, and mind you, like we launched here in Australia in March last year, so we're on a constant learning journey, particularly in a market that's saturated by our peers, is learning what customers want. What can we do different? What can we do better? And the only way we do that is by listening to the customers that write into the CS team. So we actually sit down, the entire business sits down once a week and listens to what the people within the CS team people are either talking to over the phone or responding to via email. So yeah, that would be what I would say is the realest lesson.
Well, the realest lesson I have is that Michaela has mentioned art and science and taking the mickey. So we're 2 parts of the way to like a trifecta here with great analogies and phrases. So well done on that. Yeah, my only point to add here would be, obviously for us, particularly in the small business segment, so businesses that were just kind of transitioning and coming online, it's the lesson is always, it's the age-old thing that all of us have heard at one point or another, which is begin with the end in mind. Obviously, there was that quick scramble to, hey, we got to shake everything up. Hopefully you weren't in that boat, and hopefully those of you that were on kind of had the right foundations in place. I think a lot of businesses did here, which is great. But particularly for newer businesses, it's kind of like thinking about that end result in terms of both customer journeys, right? Like taking that time to take out the butcher paper and walk through what are the various campaigns that we want to run a customer through. If you're on that end of the spectrum, or even if it's just starting up your business, it's kind of, having a bit of that, what are the right things that I need to research in terms of technology to add on to my site to make this a differentiated store, rather than something that's just sort of a, hey, I've turned it on and I have e-commerce now, but you don't see any sales from it. So begin with the end in mind. That's the age-old lesson here.
Absolutely. Now we are actually completely running out of time, but I do want to ask one more question from Brett from Beyond Intent. How many times a week should we engage with our customers? So once again, I'm going to throw this over to Reese, Michaela, and Kyle as well. So yeah, how many times a week should we engage with our customers?
Michaela, you have to have the golden bullet for this, surely, right?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Can't you just see I'm just coming to you guys from my palace, because I've sold the silver bullet to everybody. This answer is really, how long is a piece of string? I think, again, it comes back to knowing your customers and knowing what they are going to resonate with. If you have a really great analytics team, or if you're really close to your data, it is possible to interrogate it and work out what kind of engagement frequencies are going to work best for your most engaged customers. So for this one, I would really take a data approach, because the reality is there is no silver bullet. Your more engaged customers are going to want to hear from you more often, because they are more engaged with you. Your less engaged customers might need a little bit of a longer cadence between communications. And I think the most important thing to factor into that as well is all the other channels on which you are communicating. I know this particular question is about email, but there are so many different touch points in that customer journey. Don't forget the significance of all of those, but also that for some customers, it's not even going to be about frequency on email channel. It might not be about email channel at all. So if there's a way, and things like CDPs are a great way to do this because you can badge customers in certain ways, try to understand where are your most engaged customers on which channels, and then try to understand what the sweet spot is for them in terms of click-through rates, open rates, whatever metrics you want to put against it to work out that engagement. And then I think try and build your strategy around that. So I would really take a data-led approach on this one.
Yeah, you hit it on the head there, Michaela, for sure. I think I can map this back to a response that Reese gave not too long ago, which was listening to your consumers, right? Because there's not going to be a specific answer. It's different for everybody, and it's just a real disciplined exercise on behalf of your email marketing manager, or if it's just you as a founder of the business or whatever, just being very diligent in terms of reviewing, whether that's a weekly basis or if it's more frequent than that, in terms of what are all the campaigns I've run this week, what are my open rates, let's do some segmentation based upon that, and your customers will reward you for that if you're listening to them. That's the key. You gotta really deploy technology that takes that part seriously, and when you do and you take action off of it, that's where you're going to see the rewards that you're looking for.
Yeah, I'll probably go back to what I said before in terms of listening. I think there's two things here. I would don't be afraid to ask. Like, ask your customers how often do they want to be contacted, right? I've had that in a handful of my interactions with other businesses. Have I been asked how many times I want to be contacted? But I love the choice, and if I want to be contacted daily with new deals, then hell yeah, sign me up for it. The other way I'd approach this is maybe just flip the question on its head. How many times a week do you want your customers to engage with you? And so maybe approach it from that perspective is it's a build it and they will come mentality. But I think if you do build the right mechanisms and the right functions, then your customers will come to you and engage with you. So you won't have to be doing daily emails out there, which I know I send straight to spam. So if I haven't requested it and I'm getting a daily email, I will absolutely put that in spam. So I think there's, again, personality differences are very important here too. But I would ask yourself, how many times do you want your customers to engage with you, and then approach the question from that perspective, and you'll start to build different solutions for your customers and different communication mechanisms.
Yeah, definitely. Well, guys, thank you so much for everyone who sent in questions. If we didn't get time to answer them today, feel free to reach out to our speakers directly. Alternatively, they can probably reach out to you as well, because we will be handing all these questions over to them. But for now, we must actually end this webinar. I would like to thank Reese, Michaela, and Kyle for taking the time out to be with us today. And I'd also like to thank our audience for spending an hour with us this morning. It was fantastic. Just want to wish everyone a happy Tuesday. Hope you're all safe, especially if you're in Melbourne right now. Enjoy lockdown. I'm not. But I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next webinar. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Hello.